Think about it. It's a big start, a bold opening to begin with Socrates, the ancient Greek philosopher. He was sentenced to death for teaching heresy to his colleagues and peers. But in his defence when he was tried, his words were, "But I didn't teach anybody anything. I only helped them to think." Now, that's part and parcel of what this session's about. And each of the PechaKuchas that you participate in will help us to think. And it's often insightful to think about how do we invoke our journey of improvement to improve outcomes for children and for young people. And there's lots of different aspects to that. Now, there isn't just one burning aspect, one burning question that we've got to reflect upon. There's lots of different elements to it, and all need equal consideration. One of the most important things to think about is how do we create a positive impact? How do we make a difference? Now, there's different ways to have an impact. And as you can see from the picture where the domino strikes the egg, unless your object is to make an omelette, it's not necessarily a positive impact. A crater formed by a meteor hitting the Earth is not necessarily a positive impact. What we want is something more gentle than that. An impact where we send out a positive message, and that positivity and that inspiration ripples outwards like a drop landing in a puddle. And that positivity is spread out wider and wider across the whole setting. That positive message, that change, that new idea or fresh approach to help build sustainable and positive change. Now, that could happen every day, and it probably does. And it starts with you and those conversations that you have and those interactions that you have with children and young people all begin with you. And that includes yourself and those people who work within your team as well. They're all part of that journey and part of sharing that positive message and creating that culture of positive change. And to do that, sometimes we need to think about how we can have a little period of reflection. Because sometimes when you're caught up in the hustle and bustle of daily activities, it's difficult to communicate as effectively as sometimes we might choose to. There's an author called Simon Sinek, and he's got a book called Start With Why. And in his book, he explores how some of the great cultures and organisations and leaders have a process that they work through, and they start with why do they do what they do, and it's well worth a read. And there's some videos available on YouTube that you can watch where he does a really good TED talk exploring and explaining his golden circle. And he says that we're starting from the outwards and working in. Most organisations can explain what they do. Some can explain how they do it. But very few can explain why they do what they do. What's the reason for being there? What's their values and beliefs that shape exactly what they do? Now, that's a lot to take in, isn't it? It's a massive question. Why are we here? What are the core beliefs and values that we operate within? And how are they shared, and how do we communicate them to our teams, to our parents and our children so that they all buy in? What separates us, and how are we different from other organisations? Now, it's not like following a blueprint where it's really easy to follow and there's some clear instructions to help us design this perfect situation. But it's more of a learning through what you think's right for your organisation, and that might be different for somebody else's. Now, whenever you start off on a journey like this, your core beliefs, your visions and values, there might be a few things that you don't get it right. You might not get it right the first time, and it's having those conversations and shaping those discussions and shared beliefs with your team and your parents and your children. So what is your values and beliefs, and how do they align with the organisation with which you work for? It's really difficult to do that when you're caught up in the hustle and the bustle of busy life, and you're busy clearing the snow, as one person put it, or feel like you're juggling 50 different things. And everything rushes past in a bit of a blur, much like the picture shown on the screen. But sometimes, to enable us to take that step back, we need to change our perspective and change our lens and our filter of how we look at it. Let's turn the world upside down and have a look. Where do I see now, and how do I fit in? And it gives us just that chance to sit back and have a think for a moment. I sometimes play a game with my daughter called Would You Rather. You'll know the game. Would you rather live in a tiny house but be comfortable and happy? Or would you rather live in a multi-million-pound mansion on the side of a volcano that could blow up at any moment? Which one would it be? Would you rather work for an evil organisation for millions of pounds? Or would you rather work where you make people happy? Now, I'm guessing you didn't choose the money. You wouldn't necessarily choose an evil corporation where you earn millions of pounds, because your values and your beliefs align much more closely, and I'm sure that of your staff team do, that actually working for a nice trusted organisation where we make a continued difference for children and young people and we support those families make a difference. And that helps to shape what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. The ideas of innovation and trying out new practice and ideas don't happen in meetings online. Quite often, those are quite boring, and that's where work gets done and decisions have to be made. But it's not a place for creativity. Those conversations better take place in what's known as water cooler conversations, or those coffee conversations where you can just go and talk through an idea. So it's important to build in lots of time and opportunity for those informal environments where people can have that bit of an offload or a bit of I want to try this out, and we create that positive culture where we value people's ideas and thoughts and put them into practice. Take a big, wide look at everything that goes on around us and think, well, what is our why? How could we do what we do differently? How do we communicate it, and how do we bring people with us to continue to make a positive difference for children and young people?